All right. So water, water, water. Now we have too much. So how can we reduce it if we have too much water in a specific area? Well, first of all, we kind of have to understand how water works, right? So we have a river system that flows out of the mountains, whatever. And on both sides of that are flat regions. These flat regions exist, usually surrounding mountain ranges on both sides. And so that is what we call the floodplain. And so it's natural for water systems to have excess water in, say, the springtime when the snow is starting to melt, and the water comes out of the banks and then flows across these floodplains. And these floodplains are usually rich soils, of course. They're wetlands. And what we've come in and done is turned them into farmland, or we filled them in with buildings and cities so we can be along riverways. But those flat areas on both sides are floodplains. So they're highly productive wetlands. They help reduce erosion. They help control the flood because it absorbs all the water in those floodplains. And that also takes care of a lot of the nutrients and other issues in the soil, keeping water quality high. And those floodplains also are a place for water to leach back into the ground and refill the groundwater supplies. And so there's lots of different uses for those. And so floodplains matter, and we've been altering floodplains quite a bit here. So how do we help out? Well, human activity has contributed to this flooding issue. We've removed a lot of the vegetation along floodplains, which absorbs water. Draining and building on those wetlands so the water can't be absorbed anymore results in, when it does flood, greater quantities of flood rushing down places and not being absorbed. And so to minimize floods, what people have done is they've narrowed rivers and they've built levees and walls along those, or dammed up the water and stopped it from going down. The problem is when that happens, you lose all those other benefits of floodplains. And so what are some solutions to this situation? Well, there's two ways of looking at this flood damage issue. You can either attempt to prevent flood damage from happening or attempt to control it when it does happen. So controlling it is altering things. And so it's using engineering and mechanical devices to solve the problem. So if you straighten and deepen streams, it's called channelization. That can help mitigate flooding issues. You can build levees and flood walls along streams. New Orleans is a good example of that. And you can build dams. And all of these things will help solve the problem of flooding, or help control flooding, I should say. The book advocates that we do less of that and we rely more on natural systems to solve the problem. Natural systems are designed to solve the problem. So preserve forest and wet watersheds, places for water to be absorbed. Preserve and restore wetlands so that they can act as a sponge when floods come. Tax development on floodplains so that it reduces the likelihood of people wanting to build in those locations. And then use floodplains primarily for recharging of aquifers, for agricultural and for forestry stuff, and not have people develop there. Those are advocates the books use that would help prevent flooding issues, as opposed to the system that we are using more and more of, which is attempting to control them mechanically. So, issues with flooding. That's the end of chapter 13. Peace, love.